Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Web3 Talks with Google. My name is Raphael Hyde, and I am one of the Web3 leads. And today, I'm really excited to have my buddy Chris with us, who is the co-founder and CEO of Scare.City. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Raphael.
Awesome. So, essentially, Chris founded this Bitcoin-based collectibles marketplace. And before that, Chris, why don't you just share a little bit about kind of your background and what kind of molded you to be ready for this big challenge?
Oh yeah, that's a big question. I think ultimately I was just wired for entrepreneurship, and I only found that out by trying everything else and realizing it just didn't work for me. Certainly, my life would be easier if I could have found another path. I started off my career as an industrial engineer, worked in retail operations with a bunch of Fortune 555 companies. Didn't really find satisfaction in that, so I went on to business school and explored a few options there. That's when I really got exposed to the tech startup scene and started fiddling away at some of my own ideas. That was kind of the theme from there on out, like always fiddling around with some startup idea while either in school during the MBA or working for other startups, corporations, startup financing teams, kind of the whole gambit. And the good thing is through that really diverse experiences, I just picked up a very diverse set of skills and became a real generalist. Outside, of course, of the really hardcore technology disciplines. Unfortunately, I found a co-founder to assist with that.
Awesome. And then I'm always curious what people's origin story is and how they got into Web3. And you being, in the Bitcoin space, I feel like your story might be a little bit longer than others. Like, how did it all begin? What turned you on to this cool internet money?
Yeah. Look, I don't know if my story is all that unique to a lot of Bitcoiners, and that, I've always been really fascinated by investing in stocks, particularly, got started investing in stocks at a pretty early age as soon as I had money to do it. And that was my excuse for really paying attention to what was going on. And I started investing 2006, so just in time for the great financial crisis, and saw everything that happened then. And it was just kind of an early realization that our foundations that feel secure aren't necessarily as secure as they feel. And then, watching what came out of that as far as the economy and financial markets, and seeing the Federal Reserve play such a large role in financial markets, and a disconnect from, kind of the more fundamental investment theses that I had initially learned. It just started to feel kind of wrong to me. And then especially when I started realizing the second, third order effects of that, of how that shapes society, and specifically with regards to inequality, realizing that with, risk assets being artificially inflated, that benefited those who already had a lot of investable resources, and those who did not, they suffered because the value of the US dollar slowly decayed. And then, once I had that realization, I kind of got angry, and I got angry just for out of principle, but then also as an investor, I felt forced to participate in a system that I fundamentally did not agree with. So I was kind of looking for an answer to this. And then I kind of came across Bitcoin, and it wasn't like the first time I had come across Bitcoin. First time I'd come across Bitcoin, it was pitched to me as internet money, and that just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, or at least it didn't seem like a strong enough use case to gain adoption. But when I started to understand Bitcoin as, fixed supply, sound money, and more of a savings technology and an alternative to investing in, traditional risk assets, that started to make a lot of sense to me. And that sent me down the rabbit hole. This was 2017, so when things got really crazy then. And I just, it just became all consuming, where I just wasn't interested in anything else. And I found myself, even through like the bear markets of 2018, 19, just consuming as much content as I could on Bitcoin. And I basically came to terms with that. If I wanted to be good in my professional career, I'd have to be something related to Bitcoin, because otherwise I just wasn't going to get the most out of my position, because I just was distracted and passionate about Bitcoin. So that was, that's when I really started turning the wheels as to like, what can I do here? And during that time in the ecosystem, the Ethereum ecosystem started taking off with NFTs. It was still very early in hindsight, but it was clear to me from a close observer that there was something here as far as a use case. And what I also noticed was that a lot of the creatives in the Bitcoin space that I had come to admire, many of them were kind of being forced into the Ethereum ecosystem because there was a way to monetize their work and basically live and be successful as an artist. So I started thinking about, what can we do for Bitcoin in a way that's authentic to Bitcoin. And that's when I started first brainstorming ideas. Came up with a general concept of using Bitcoin in a marketplace setting, and also to prove the scarcity of physical goods. And worked on some MVPs by myself for a while. And when I was kind of close to launching an MVP, that's when COVID hit New York, specifically where I am and where I was working at the time for a tech startup there. So city shut down. We all got let go. The whole, it was a team of like 10 of us working on a more traditional consumer-facing app. And that's when I took the opportunity, like 2 days after being laid off, to pitch one of the technical guys on that team and say, "Hey, I'm working on this idea. I kind of had a little bit of traction as far as like a grant. And it was like a fake grant, but it sounded like decent credibility. And he didn't have anything going on because he had just unexpectedly been laid off. So he was like, "Yeah, sure, let's try it." And we fiddled away for a few months with a couple MVPs. First couple tries didn't really take off. And then from our community, what really helped here was that there was a very strong community of Bitcoin creators that were desperate for a solution here, because they were in this pickle where like they wanted to create art. They wanted to create art that was authentic to Bitcoin, and they didn't want to sell it on Ethereum platforms. So they were hugely helpful in giving us a bunch of ideas and helping us just, generate a little bit of noise and attract some attention. And, at this time also, the Lightning Network was kind of reaching some level of, mainstream usability. And I was educating myself in what was going on there. And an idea that came up between our community and what we were all learning together about Lightning was, what if we use Bitcoin specifically over the Lightning Network to collateralize auction bids? And what I mean by that is, if you place a bid for, let's say, $100 in an auction, why not deposit $1 in Bitcoin to place that bid, and have that $1 keep you accountable for actually paying your auction bid should you win the auction. And this was kind of the general premise where everything took off from. We built an MVP around this. We brought in kind of our all-star artist to sell an amazing work of his. Chief Monkey is his name. And we auctioned it off, and it was just blew away our expectations, and ended up selling for 1 Bitcoin, where his previous works had sold for, like 1/10 of that. And we generated just a ton of buzz from the community. It was a super exciting event. Of course, like the auction came down to the last second, and it was extremely intense. So from there, we realized, okay, we have something here, and let's build on it. So that's the origin story.
Gotcha. Thank you for all the detail. And I love that you have a background in finance, so you can understand like macros and global economy, and I guess the traditional finance models that I would definitely agree we've kind of become almost enslaved in some of these like institutional structures. So Web3 is definitely here to revolutionize that. I want to go back to when you were talking about wanting to do something for the Bitcoin creators. How did you build a relationship with that community? Were you active in it already? Because it seemed like, you were you were aware enough to know there was a need. And then I'm assuming there was something else that kind of gave you that aha moment.
Yeah, so I think they were just really ready for us more than anything else. So our first MVP was we sold face masks. This was like right when COVID broke out. Face masks that were like Bitcoin themed, and like what made them, functionally themed as far as Bitcoin was they had when purchasing, a buyer would give us their public address to a Bitcoin key that they held, and we would actually print that address on the face mask. And the concept here was, okay, they have the private key. They can prove that this is an authentic face mask, and that the supply is, what we say it is, right? Because we're listing them all out, and everybody can prove that they own their face mask. So, kind of a silly idea, but it was enough to get the attention of at least one, somewhat influential creator in the space who was Chief Monkey, and he, we sold like 20 face masks. So like the Bitcoin community is not that big. When someone does something new, like people pay attention. And I think there's generally just a huge tailwind of like building in a community where, if we do well, the community does well. Like everybody's kind of rooting for everybody else to succeed because it's all for the benefit of Bitcoin in this case. So he found us and was like, hey, let's talk more about some ideas here. And he was well connected with a lot of the Bitcoin artist community and brought them into our group. And that's where we really were able to get the strong conversations going and establish relationships with everybody.
Awesome. Let's talk more about Scare.City and kind of what you're working on right now. Maybe what are some of the most important goals that you have within Scare.City?
Sure. So what is Scare.City today? We are an auction house as well as a marketplace that is just purely authentic to Bitcoin. All transactions we do are in Bitcoin. We use we use the under collateralized bid deposits, as I explained, but we also use Bitcoin as collateral in another unique way in our marketplace. So when sellers want to sell something specifically, we've kind of expanded our marketplace now to physical goods, but we started with digital goods, so Bitcoin NFTs. A lot of people, even if they're familiar with NFTs, aren't so familiar with the Bitcoin NFT scene, but they started there. Well, started is a strong word, but they've been there since 2014. And like the rare Pepes, that was one of the first like NFT waves back in 2016. So we started a marketplace for those. And what's unique about us and how we use Bitcoin there is if you want to sell a rare Pepe, we don't need you to send us the rare Pepe. You simply list the rare Pepe that you want to sell, how much you want to sell it for, and then we charge you a listing deposit, which functions similar to our auction bid deposits. It's under collateralizing your listing. So, we only need about 5%, we found, to keep sellers accountable for actually delivering these goods should they sell. So that's kind of the fundamental innovation, both in our auction house as well as our marketplace, is using Bitcoin as collateral and actually under collateralizing auction bids and marketplace listings.
Gotcha.
So that's where we are today. We've done somewhere over 200 Bitcoin in sales since we started in late 2020, like December 2020. So really just scaling as far as we can within the Bitcoin niche. And while it is a niche, there has been a lot of growth even in the bear market now within the Bitcoin NFT ecosystem. Counterparty is the protocol that we used primarily to mint NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain. And within that ecosystem, it's kind of become the counterculture of the NFT ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kind of like hip hop, underground hip hop stars, as well as some big names in the hip hop have decided to mint their tokens on Bitcoin using Counterparty. So that's been a big focus of ours. The next question for us is, okay, we're going to continue to build out our marketplace within this Bitcoin niche under the Scare.City brand, but what else can we do that's maybe outside of this niche and perhaps more scalable, can perhaps reach a broader audience, even if it's right now we're a niche of a niche when it comes to we're a Bitcoin company, but then Bitcoin art,
Mm-hmm.
to use the term broadly. What can we do to branch out of that niche of a niche and at least go after the Bitcoin market as a whole, which we see, obviously we're optimistic here and we see that adoption increasing over time. So a big focus for us now is actually testing out the concept of not just selling Bitcoin art, physical or digital, for Bitcoin, but basically selling anything for Bitcoin. So you could picture it as something like an eBay eBay for Bitcoin, right? And the fundamental hypothesis here is that people who are really into Bitcoin, especially in a bear market, they've spent all of the fiat that they possibly can on buying Bitcoin. Maybe they're willing to sell. There's actually a meme in Bitcoin. It's like sell your chair for Bitcoin. Sell anything that you don't necessarily need for Bitcoin and probably at a price lower than what you would list it for in fiat terms if you were to list it in eBay, because you're receiving Bitcoin for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also, what I should emphasize here is with our collateral model in our auctions as well as marketplace, because we have that Bitcoin to keep participants accountable, we need very little personal information from them. We really just ask for an email address so we can communicate with them,
Mm-hmm.
which is not the case with an eBay where they really want a robust profile from you to kind of help keep you accountable. So that's a big focus for us right now. It's like we're weathering a bear market here. We don't know, we're still doing pretty well, all things considered, but we can't expect significant growth during a bear market while we're focused on such a niche market. So we're thinking, okay, look, I was there for the 2018, 2019 into 2020 bear market. I know how long these things can go, even though I'm optimistic. I was optimistic then, so I just have to consider the reality that I could be wrong with my short-term optimism. And I'm thinking about how can we, expand the business in a way that is less correlated to whatever's happening in the overall market and has a chance to be successful with or without Bitcoin
Gotcha.
price going up.
And so you mentioned there's a few things you can do to kind of be proactive around these downturns in the market. What might some of those be?
Well, being very lean. First of all, we're small. It's as far as full-time employees, it's only me and my co-founder. Still, so far we've been very creative as far as getting more help. Finding really good interns on the dev side, finding people who are just super enthusiastic about Bitcoin on the business side, and they have fiat jobs, but they have a little bit of extra time to help out. So that's, you know, the biggest thing is just minimizing our burn.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, look, I mean, that's it. It's minimizing the burn and trying to manage cash flow. Of course, like the time for managing cash flow has kind of come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, we did raise, as you know, we raised some funding at the back of last year, most of which was in U.S. dollars. So that gave us a nice runway in U.S. dollars that has been hugely helpful in weathering this downturn. But you know, otherwise, we're just trying to build the foundation for coming out of this thing, whether it's, you know, sooner or later.
Mm-hmm. And that being said, because I kind of feel that maybe we're like maybe 6 months or so. Maybe I'm being too
Sorry,
bold.
excuse me 1 second. My wife's locked out.
No problem.
Okay, I'm back.
No worries. Yeah, that being said, like coming out of this bear market, what is your like grand vision for Scarcity? Let's say things go incredibly well over the next year or two. Where do you guys hope to be?
So we have two big visions, and I don't see them as mutually exclusive, but we only need one of them to work.
Mm-hmm.
The one is being like the Bitcoin OpenSea, right? So if you know, the Bitcoin NFT scene takes off in a big way, we are positioned to be the go-to marketplace for that ecosystem. And again, a lot of momentum happening there, but it's based on quite a few assumptions, right? It's based on not just Bitcoin surviving and ultimately doing well. It's also based on NFTs surviving and ultimately doing well. It's based on Bitcoin NFTs taking kind of, you know, continuing to take some market share in the overall NFT ecosystem. And then there's different protocols within the Bitcoin NFT ecosystem, and we have to make sure we're you know, supporting the right ones there. So a lot of assumptions there, but you know, we are proactively positioning ourselves for that big vision. The other is what I alluded to, of becoming kind of the Bitcoin powered eBay, of you know, allowing anyone to sell anything within, you know, we're not doing Silk Road here, like within legal frameworks for Bitcoin. And we see that as, you know, there's still based on a big assumption, which is ultimately Bitcoin adoption, and not just Bitcoin adoption as far as the store of value, but as a medium of exchange. But ultimately, we think if Bitcoin adoption continues to increase, commerce using Bitcoin will continue to increase, especially given the innovation that's happening on the Lightning Network. And we think this, you know, this Bitcoin-powered eBay will exist, and we feel like we're best positioned to lead it.
Gotcha. And then where do you find most of your users coming from, or creators also? Because I've found there seems to be somewhat of a contrast between the Ether community and the Bitcoin community. And I guess one of the things that I've observed over the last couple of years is there being a lot more Bitcoin-based, like personal finance, peer-to-peer payment services that are arising in South America, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, not as many on the East side, at least in my research. So have you seen like I guess, a growth in activity in other parts of the world on your platform?
Okay, well, I want to make sure I understand your question. So as far as like our user base, where are they coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah, so predominantly in the US and Europe. That's both our artists as well as our collectors. And you know, why is that? It's a good question. Look, we do have some artists that are from other places. We have an artist that we've been working from recently that's from Nigeria, and obviously that's super cool to, like, you know, see him bring in his like local culture and style into his work, especially in an area where, like, you know, there's a huge narrative about how Bitcoin can be a big benefit. We're seeing some of that, but it's still, it's, the artists really are, they're focused in more Western countries. And, I don't, I think, this it's probably just more of a factor than anything of that's where there's the most artists who can really dedicate a lot of time to being an artist. That's kind of a luxury profession that people in less advantageous parts of the world can't really consider seriously. I think that's one part of it. Maybe it's just part of the adoption curve too, where I think it trends with overall Bitcoin adoption, even though the narratives are out there that this is for the instrument can be hugely beneficial to emerging countries. The reality is adoption is in more first world countries. And look, it's probably, if I had to, just take a stab here, it's probably because the volatility at this point. It's an extremely volatile asset for being a store of value, and only people with money to lose can afford to really consider it as a store of value. And then also, like, it's hard to go down the rabbit hole if you're not, already using it and storing your value in it. Like, that's part of the journey, right? So people who just don't have disposable income at current volatility of Bitcoin, it's very hard for them to be, in my mind, and like, I don't have like boots on the ground experience here, but it's.
Oh, Chris.
That just kind of extends to being involved in Bitcoin culture as an artist.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I'd love to get your like economic perspective on that. As Bitcoin and ETH and a lot of the other, I guess, major L1s continue to grow, where do you see maybe there being the strongest adoption? Do you think Bitcoin as itself will become like the main, or will stay and become the main like store of value coin? Or how do you see that changing? Maybe you have like a thesis on this. Can you hear me, Chris?
Sorry, you're kind of breaking up there, Raphael. I'm getting messages that it's my network. Can you try that one more time, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'd be curious to get your economic perspective on.
I think I've got you now. Can you try again?
Yeah. Is this coming through? Testing. Are we all right? Yes, no? Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do something with my connection here.
Okay, sure. No problem. I guess on that note, how's everybody else doing? Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Well, I hope everybody's having a good day. Where's everybody calling in from? Oh, cool. Nice. Thank you. Oh, sweet. We're all over the place. Oh my gosh. We got Germany, Mountain View, Menlo Park, SFO, Sunnyvale. Awesome. Boulder. Very cool.
Okay.
Can you hear me now, Chris?
You're coming through. The audio's coming through. I lost video, but I can hear you now. I switched networks, so hopefully that improved things.
Okay, no problem. Wow, we have a global audience. That's cool.
Sorry about that.
Dropping their locations in the chat, which is exciting. Yeah, Chris, I guess just going back to the previous question, I'd love to get your kind of economic perspective on Bitcoin as kind of we go into the next like 5 to 10 years. What do you think Bitcoin will become in comparison to the other major L1 tokens?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge question.
Yeah.
Look, I think where Bitcoin is most well positioned certainly is in the store value use case, and I think that's because it is, objectively most decentralized as far.
Oh, we lost him. I'm gonna message Chris and see if there's anything we can do to help. Okay. Thanks everybody for being patient with us. A little bit of technical difficulties. Okay, Chris, we lost you. See if he's able to rejoin. This is where we need like on-demand elevator music. Okay. All right. Well, let's. I'm gonna hang out for like another couple minutes. Hopefully, he's able to rejoin. If not, we may have to end early, but that's all right. We'll just adapt. Okay. Thanks, Angelo. Yes, I agree. It's unexpected. We just got to roll with it. Yeah. I'm kind of curious actually to ask the audience because rarely will we have Bitcoin guests, and I wanted to. My interest there was to kind of bring a different perspective because I find where we can often spend a lot of time in our own echo chambers. With the people on the call today, what kind of piqued your interest to join? I'm just really curious because this is much different than the usual theme. And feel free to speak up. I would love to hear people's thoughts. Oh, Chris,
Back.
you're back. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Well, no worries. Yeah, we were just chatting about if you needed some more time, we were gonna hang out. So I'll jump back to that last question again, if you wouldn't mind kind of continuing your answer.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know where I lost you there. I was probably talking to myself for a couple minutes. But I think what's most important here is just to consider the development path that the Bitcoin ecosystem is taking relative to Ethereum and other L1s, where Bitcoin has been first focused on creating a strong foundational layer 1, and then innovating on the L2s and call it L3s or whatever, but not touching that L1. Whereas Ethereum and the others seem to be taking the direction of, okay, let's bring all the use cases to the L1, and then we'll figure out the scaling and security later. It seems more kind of like trying to build a plane as you're flying it kind of thing, which obviously has been made them much faster to market, which has led to a ton of innovation. But I think there's a lot of questions about the long-term sustainability of that. So that's where I think Bitcoin has the potential to become more than just a store of value and more than just a payments rail, and has the potential to become a technology platform. Is in like the L2, L3 layers. It's just going to take a long time to get built out because, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. But a big part is because it's not happening on the L1, and because that L1 is staying as is.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense, and I totally agree. And is it still true that Bitcoin has never been hacked? That was my assumption.
I think so. I'm not the expert on this, but I don't know. I think I've heard this come up, and someone, people can argue that like in the early days there was like a weird block or something, but generally speaking, I think it's consensus that Bitcoin isn't hasn't been proven hackable up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's the case. So on to a question about what can companies like Google, these large Web2 giants, what can we do to kind of help catalyze the Web3 revolution, and maybe more specifically the stuff that you're working on?
Well, there's a huge need for just general infrastructure here. We're not able to really plug into the traditional web app infrastructure because we're native to Bitcoin, and that means like there's a lot of tools that I feel like we don't have. And like honestly, I don't know what we don't have because I haven't necessarily experienced all of this functionality in more of the Web2 world. But I know we have to make up a lot of things as we go. So huge potential for infrastructure, which certainly Google is well resourced to provide. Now, I mean, there's another part of this, which is, look, there's a branding thing here too, where I don't think it's a secret that Bitcoiners are skeptical people. They really value privacy, and that's not necessarily synonymous with Google. So it is going to be a tough pitch to Bitcoiners and Bitcoin companies to adopt Google services, just because as of right now, it's not necessarily on brand. So that's a challenge. But look, I mean, like we use Google Suite. I depend heavily on Google Suite, whether it's Gmail, just apps, or excuse me, Sheets, Docs, Forms, all of that, heavily dependent on. So that kind of tooling is hugely helpful, and there's just so much more that we could benefit from.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, any final thoughts?
Well, look, first of all, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the great questions. If you want to learn more about us, check us out on Scare.City. We actually just kicked off a really important collection. If you're at all involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you're probably familiar with Hodlonaut. He's kind of a prominent figure in Bitcoin Twitter, and he's currently being sued for defamation by someone who many consider to be a fake Satoshi, someone who claims to be Satoshi but has not taken the easy steps to prove that they're actually Satoshi. And he's being sued. His legal fees are amounting to over $1 million. So the Bitcoin community is rallying around this to help generate funds for him. We are honored to take part of this. We're currently running an auction or a collection of 30-something auctions from creators all across the Bitcoin space. 100% of it is going to finance his defense for getting through these lawsuits. So if there was ever a time to check out Scare.City and participate, this is a great time. If you go to our webpage, it's the Hodlonaut collection, Scare.City. You can't miss it. Check it out there. And otherwise, follow us on Twitter, Scarce. You have to spell out DOT on Twitter, Scarce.City. We're also really active on Telegram. Our Telegram chat is linked at the bottom of all of our auction pages. So pretty easy to find there. And I think you have my email as well. Like, always appreciate people reaching out, no matter what you're interested in, as long as you are interested in what we're doing. I'd love to hear more and understand if there's a way for us to collaborate in some kind of way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Thanks everyone for joining. That's it for today. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Raphael. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.